GM. GM. Bowden looks quite bad. The understatement of the century. So, structurally, the white line, the previous low, is the must not lose level. Bowden has not technically lost it yet, so for now I'm going to do nothing. I do suspect, though, it's quite likely to follow something like the red path, where it does actually grind lower and just kind of spends more weeks doing nothing and being suppressed and being sold into and sold into and sold into before eventually having a strong reaction to the upside. Remember, the election is not till November, and there's a lot of time for it to go through a reaccumulation process. The Trump coin itself is actually in a much stronger position. It's flipped this previous all-time high resistance into support, held it, impulsing off it, still on the daily bands. So the Trump coin actually looks pretty good, and the Bowden coin looks like shite. So we're in this weird sort of, not even weird, we're just in an interesting spot. And I think that mostly this is because of what I talked about over the past few weeks. Bowden is about a month behind Trump, right? Trump topped out on the 4th of March. Bowden topped out early April. If you look over here, Bowden topped out on the 8th of April. So it's about a month behind in terms of its accumulation, cause and effect, reaccumulation process. And so I'd say you want to be patient with it. I mean, I'm not willing to cut it at this point. I'd rather just hold it until I see. I mean, so the question I have from the question I'm asking, like, is, does the Bowden coin have any chance of being relevant again or going higher? I think the answer is still yes. I don't think because there's been suppression and strong selling and a lack of demand, I don't think that means that Bowden is dead. Just like Trump wasn't dead over here. I think, honestly, the positioning is just bad, just in a bad position for it. You look at, like, when it's over here and it's unable to bounce in any of these phases, right? It just grinds, or it chops down, and this has happened to, a bunch of coins. And it could just be a timing issue. And since it's a smaller part of my portfolio, it's just a meme coin, a few percent of spot, I'm willing to keep holding it. But make no mistake, it's certainly not short-term bullish. It's certainly not moving in the right direction. However, given that the election is still 4 or 5 months away, and I do think that it can go lower, especially if the market does, and I do think that we can see bigger movements after Bitcoin shakes itself out if we are going lower. I would say probably this is just a timing issue. What would change that would actually be a time-based invalidation. It would be for Bowden to go significantly lower and show no signs of, reaccumulation or bouncing within the next, it could be a few weeks or a month. So I'll reassess if we do see multiple closes below the white line, which we haven't had yet. I will reassess it, but it's in one of those awkward positions because I can absolutely see it going down here and spending some time down there. If it does, I will probably cut it because that's just my rule, is must not lose that level. If we lose that level and it's not a false breakout, I'll probably cut it, and I would be okay to cut it there or cut it there, and I'd be happy to buy back in here or here once it starts to show life again, because I don't plan to hold any coin forever, and you have to have an invalidation on your trade, and my invalidation is clear, it's set. So for now, no changes. But yeah, I mean, Bowden is not strong at the moment. As for the market in general, BTC, which is going to lead the market, I would say we're looking at, let me get this Bitcoin chart up, the volume chart. Got it here? Yeah. I really look at Bitcoin here, and I think this value area, which I'll extend out, you've got two of them, but the biggest, the full, from the 28th of February all the way to where we are today, Bitcoin is stuck inside this big range with heavy resistance at 72, and unless it can flip it, I see it going lower. Now, from a trading perspective, I think that once you've had that initial sell-off, you sometimes get immediate downside continuation, but more likely you get some chop straight away. Because if you look at Coinalyze and we look at the liquidations from yesterday, and I also want to look at the funding rates, predicted funding rate for Bitcoin and global, and exclude Bitcoin. We did see a nice wipeout of funding rate across altcoins yesterday. Bitcoin still has high funding. It's still positive at least. Not super high. It's dropped down a bit. Liquidations and liquidations global tell us a story too, where we had a big move. If I take off Bitcoin from this and we go out to the daily, how does it look in contrast to previous moves? Not big liquidations on BTC yet. Decent sized liquidations on altcoins, but again, not to the level of previous shakeouts we've seen, right? Some of the bigger shakeouts we've had in August, massive one, and even on the way up, the 11th of December was bigger, the 3rd of Jan was bigger, the 5th of March was bigger, and then of course some of these on the other side. So is that enough for the market to bottom? I would say probably in the short term, yes, which is why even though I feel, excuse me, I feel pretty bearish. Short term, let's say the next 4 weeks, I think probably more likely to chop sideways or decline. I also think that when you see, especially on, let's look at altcoins, especially on altcoins, when you see this level of liquidations or greater, so let's look at all the instances we've had where we've seen those high liquidation candles, it has basically always marked a local bottom, right? And we'll go all the way back to August of last year. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instances of liquidations being higher than yesterday's, and actually there's a couple more. Just drawing a line across here. There's one here. There's one here. I'll include these ones that happen over multiple days. I'll include them as a cluster, and we'll just talk about them in a second. And then we'll mark them out. So if it's green, it marked the bottom. So it marked the bottom back in August 2023. In December of 2023, it also marked the bottom. In 3rd of Jan, it marked the bottom. 28th of Feb, it marked a bottom. Over here, you can see. 28th of February, it actually was during a pump, and we went higher. 5th of March, marked the bottom. Wick down, bottom, went to new highs. 15th of March, it did not. It was the start of a decline. And on the 19th of March, it did mark a bottom. So the 15th of March, which really I should do here, it did not mark a bottom. We then had the following day high liquidations again, which also did not mark a bottom. And the following day after that, we had the same thing and it did not mark a bottom. You can see this here, 3 red days. High liquidations, liquidations, liquidations. It was not the bottom. Then we actually have one over here, which marked the bottom there as it just touched higher than what we have now. Marked the bottom, pushed up. Where we're at right now, where we're at on the 12th of April was not a bottom. And then the 13th of April was a local bottom here and chopped around. It did take out the lows, but it didn't go significantly lower before having some sideways action. So I would say that the 12th of April was not a bottom. The 13th was. Then we had the 30th of April, which was not a bottom because we went slightly lower the following day, but then it was the bottom. And where we're at today. So I would look at this and say, when you have liquidations of this magnitude, typically you see it marking a local bottom. And for some of these, especially like here, it marked the bottom, we moved back up, we took out the highs, and then it continued lower. Even here, this one, the all-time high, this marked the bottom. We went higher, we took out the highs, but it was a top then. That was it, right? It pushed higher into a top, and that was our overall top that we've had so far. Down here, it marked the bottom on the second day after, right? So that in that instance, you could see something where it goes down again today or tomorrow, and then it marks a low, and we push higher. What I'm looking at here is, as a daily trade of the day, on a daily basis, I don't think starting to get crazy on shorts is a good idea here. You can also look at these levels, right? This marked a major bottom locally. It then consolidated for a few days, pushed higher into a top, and then we went down. So this is what tends to happen. You might see price consolidate, push out to the highs, and then start a proper decline. You might see it even push lower, move up, and then a decline into a lower high, possibly. I do think that this is beginning to form a topping structure for this area to then go down to probably that area, maybe lower, but less likely. Let's see that 60k first. And so as I look at it right now, lower time frames, 4-hour chart, I would not be rushing to trade Bitcoin here on Saturday, either long or short. I actually think that probably the initial move, like the next best move over the coming days, might actually be a long, not a short, if you're a lower time frame trader. Because after that move down, especially if it does something like that and grinds into that low, that would actually be where it would set up, right? Takes out those lows, people get too bearish, rallies up, takes out the highs, they get too bullish, down we go. We also have CPI next week, inflation data. Bitcoin is also in a range. We have 67 and we have 72. There is no point having big high time frame bearish ideas when Bitcoin is still just trapped in the range it's been in since the 20th of May, right? And it's bang in the middle of it. So everyone wants, I know the tendency, your initial reaction is always to feel an emotional response, either bullish or bearish after a day like yesterday. But it really, I wouldn't be surprised to see now several days of grinding, choppy price action and not a clear direction in the short term. So keep that in mind. I'll be watching Bitcoin closely, and that liquidation day yesterday for Bitcoin and alts could produce a local low, holds for a few days or a week or two. But I do tend to think that unless there's a big catalyst that allows the market to really become bullish again during the summer period, we might just be in for a month or two of chop. And chop doesn't mean sideways. Like I would say down. A deeper sell-off. Bring some fear back into the market. Really flush out all the positions that have built since here. Or the majority of them. So we'll see. And look at some random coins and how do they look on their higher time frame charts. Is this a bottom? I'm just picking say out because, random. Is this a bottom? I mean, the key level, the key SR is there. It's not above it, right? Support, 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 even support near the wick. Couldn't get above it. Resistance, resistance, resistance. Below it, we have support currently. Is this the bottom? Or is it about to drift lower? Take out those lows. That's the bottom. Away we go. If this is the bottom, you're going to see a strong reclaim and it flipping that level. It hasn't done that yet. Cardano. Just pick random shite. This shite is going lower, purely from a price action perspective. You would say this should be absolutely going lower. It looks like a distribution structure that is redistributing before lower. That's just how it looks. And when you look across the market at enough coins, there's not a whole lot of strength here. AVAX is actually better than most in terms of this is holding as support currently. But I would say it needs to hold that, make a high, make a higher low, and that's when you can see AVAX actually being confirmed as bullish. So we're still a bit away from that. And I would just say patience is required. I'm not shorting anything today. I closed my swing longs. I'm basically just sitting spot long only. I think that's the correct decision, to just be back in your spot bags, holding and waiting to see how this market shakes out over the next few days. I absolutely can see short trades presenting. I can also see long trades presenting. I don't think there's a clear indication yet for that. I think you need to give it a bit of time, wait and see, and then we'll know soon. GM.